So good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Shuzo Brad. I'm one of the priests with the Dragonfly Sangha. And this evening, I wanted to continue our discussion on thankfulness and share some thoughts around some beliefs that can hinder that sense of thankfulness and gratitude. And gratitude is an important practice in our Buddhist heritage. The Thanksgiving is something that we recite in every liturgy, in our daily liturgy, our liturgy of the day. And in that Thanksgiving, we talk about, being thankful for all things, not just the good things, but for all things, and for acknowledging the interbeing of all nature. So understanding that everything is connected. And then additionally, in that Thanksgiving, we talk about wishing that all beings be free of suffering and that everyone can know peace. And so oftentimes gratitude and thankfulness indicates sort of a healthy relationship between ourselves and the things around us, the people and objects around us. We often bow a lot to kind of show that gratitude and that respect as well. It also shows, gratitude demonstrates that we understand that we can all benefit from each other. We can learn things from each other, and that our actions have an impact on other people, right? And that learning from other people and situations, can come from both the good things and the hard things, right? Sometimes especially from the hard things, right? But that gratitude, even though it's a fundamental part of our practice and how we sort of celebrate our practice, there are things that can get in the way of that. And sometimes it's something as simple as, a difficult day or someone made us feel angry, right? And it's hard to be thankful in those moments, right? But there's also, on a more foundational level, the fact that everything is changing can make it hard to be grateful, right? Just when you're like, well, I got everything the way that I wanted it to be, right? Now I wish I could just freeze it and then everything can stay that way. I'll be really thankful for everything because I worked really hard to get everything just so. But that's not the way that life is, right? And even though we know that impermanence is just a truth of the universe, it's one of the marks of existence, as we call them in Buddhism, right? Even if we know that sort of intellectually, it can still be really hard to experience it. And there are some beliefs about impermanence that can arise in us that can really get in the way of us feeling thankful. And Sensei Tony spoke a few weeks ago about the cycle, that of the way that the mind works, that there are beliefs that lead to thoughts, that lead to feelings, that lead to actions, that lead to consequences. And that cycle just repeats, right? And there are patterns that can develop in that cycle, especially around the experience of impermanence. Two of those patterns that can sort of not serve us well. One is ignorance, where we're trying to, that ignorance, like trying to say, wow, impermanence, things are going to last. I don't have to think about right now. Right. And another pattern that can emerge in reaction to an experience of impermanence is fear. We worry that everything is abandoning us. Goodness, everything is changing. This person goes away and I lost this person. And it can lead to this sense of despair. And neither one of those are particularly useful for us. So we want to find a better way to work with the notion of impermanence. And it's important because impermanence is every day, right? We feel it all the time. And especially as we get older, right? We see people around us are getting older. They're not as healthy or as lively as it used to be. People die, people pass away. Our relationships change. The places that we used to go, now that place is closed. Everything is always changing. And when, and personally, when Sensei asked me to speak on this topic, I had a lot of thoughts of change that had happened to me, along with getting older, kind of come to mind as I was preparing for this. Um, several months ago, one of my parents needed to go to the ER, with a bit of a health scare, and it got my brain spinning. Oh my goodness, like, what does this mean? What if, all sorts of worries there. A few weeks ago on my birthday, I turned 40, and we were planning on getting together to celebrate. Then my sister actually had to go to the ER, with a bit of a health scare. So again, just a lot of worry and churning. I had a health scare a few weeks ago as well, sort of, as a part of getting older. And so, goodness, several experiences myself with this notion of impermanence and change and fear of those things. So goodness, none of us are perfect when it comes to this kind of thing. Even myself, having recently turned 40, just that number 40 and the way that we celebrate that age. I have very distinct memories, when I was younger, and one of our family friends was turning 40, and I went with my parents to buy some things or rent some things at a party store to celebrate this person. So, lordy, lordy, look who's 40, and, black balloons and over the hill and all of this stuff. And I was like, well, aren't birthdays supposed to be happy, with red balloons and cakes and things like that? And here's all this depressing imagery, black, the color black around this, what's supposed to be a happy day. And I remember in this party store, there was underneath all of the shelves, there was this long, full-size casket, a black casket. And I'd been to one funeral in my life. And so I knew, what a casket was. I was like, goodness, what is, what is this thing? Why is it in a party store? And they said, like, oh, we, rent it out for, Halloween parties and stuff like that, and for over the hill parties. And I was like, goodness, turning 40 must be awful. Look at all this terrifying imagery that accompanies turning 40. And now here I am, I'm 40. So I guess that's me now. I'm sort of on the back nine of the golf course of life now. But, it's we all experience this, right? In some way, shape, or form, in ourselves and other people, the fact that things change. We all know this. Again, if only just sort of from a fundamental level, like, hey, I know that things change. I'm a Buddhist. Impermanence is one of those 3 marks of existence. I get it. Right. And for, hundreds of years, thousands of years, we as people, especially as it pertains to, change of our health and even death, people have, developed practices to work with that and to sort of change their relationship with that. And one of those practices that you've probably heard about is memento mori. Memento mori being a Latin phrase that means remember you must die. Right? Not remember someday you may die. No, remember you must die. Right? And that's I read an article a few weeks ago about a Catholic nun that was looking to bring this practice back. And I know in Buddhism, reflection on death is something that is not at all uncommon. Meditation in graveyards, meditation with skulls or dead bodies. This notion that, like, hey, we need to come to grips with the fact that life is not going to last forever, right? And this isn't intended to be a dark and morbid thing to depress us or get us upset. It's meant to really teach us that, hey, life is really precious. 1, 2, we don't know how much time we all have, right? Some of us may live for a long time. Some of us may, not live much longer. And again, not to be dark or depressing, but that's true, right? And hopefully, one of the other outputs of that understanding is not fear or ignorance, but it's a sense of gratitude that, like, hey, I want to be thankful for the people I have in my life. And in fact, in the last several weeks, I've had a few people say to me, peers who I work with, like, hey, I want to spend a lot of time with my elderly relatives because, quote unquote, you never know, right? You don't know how much time people have left. Maybe this is their last Thanksgiving. Maybe this is their last Christmas, things like that, But we want to make sure that we're not only extending that sense of appreciation and gratitude for people who are maybe older or unwell in our families, but to everyone. And again, this reflection, and these types of reflections are not meant to, be morbid or revel in death, but just to help us not flinch at it quite so hard, with it being something that is a certainty and inevitability, and perhaps in our reflection on impermanence and on transience and the preciousness of life, maybe we feel some feelings arise in us, right? Some thoughts that are coming up, some of those mental patterns that we have and how we react to these truths. And maybe that's something that we can work with, practice the 4 questions and work with those thoughts and kind of see where they're coming from, what they're rooted in, and how we can work with that. Oftentimes too, as we think about impermanence and dwell on those things, what may also arise is sort of a thoughts of the past, right? And remembering, maybe being grateful for the way that things used to be, or the things that brought us here, the people who have been important in our lives. And that kind of gratitude for circumstances from the past is pretty common. Maybe it's a bit romanticized, right? And we think like, oh, remember when, like, things were so nice back then. And I spoke a few weeks ago in one of my previous talks. I brought up Calvin and Hobbes because I love Calvin and Hobbes. And there are often times where I go through an experience and a Calvin and Hobbes comic will come into my mind, and that was true as I was getting ready for this talk. There is a strip that I remembered where Calvin asks his dad, Calvin being a 6-year-old boy, asks his father, hey, Dad, which days are the halcyon days of youth, right? The halcyon days of youth sort of being this notion of like, when things were great and lovely, like, couldn't we all go back there, right? So he asks his dad, like, which days are the halcyon days of youth? The Saturday one, Saturday being such an important day for kids. And his dad says, he's like, well, actually, I think they're sort of rewarded, retroactively as you get older, right? So halcyon-ity is retroactive, is sort of the takeaway of the comic. Because again, we have this sense of, nostalgia for the past, and we're grateful for like, oh, I remember when things, used to be like that. But sometimes what comes into our mind is a bit of, regret that can happen there, right? Because Osho Mike talked about remembering in his talk last week, right? And oftentimes people remember things fondly. Obviously, he was talking in his Dharma talk around remembering his practice, and here, it's more about remembering the things that got us here, right? And that's also a big part of our liturgical cycle. We celebrate Oban and the ancestors who have, brought us about, and reflect on the fact that we are going to be the ancestors of someone else, right? And memories can get tricky because, like I said, we can sort of clean them up and think like, oh, back then things were so nice. And like I said, a little bit of regret may creep in. Or maybe there are holidays that come along. We obviously just celebrated Thanksgiving here in the US. We have things like Christmas, New Year's. We have Satori on our liturgical celebration, our calendar coming up here. And some of those events can give us opportunities to be very intentionally thankful and have those moments in time. But what we don't want to do is limit our gratitude only to, when we're remembering something and thinking back on the past and dwelling there, or for these moments in the calendar. Because like I said, there are reminders and opportunities for this every day. Because like I said, impermanence is something that is true. And it's one of those 3 marks of existence, along with suffering and along with, there being no permanent, everlasting, independent self. And in our practice, what we do with those 3 marks of existence is we kind of think, well, okay, what does that mean for us? What can we do with the fact that there's suffering? What can we do with the fact that there's no independent self, everlasting self? What can we do with the fact that everything is impermanent? In our practice, the second principle of oneness that addresses impermanence talks about the fact that everything passes away is an opportunity for some kind of creative act and some kind of creative change. And that creativity can be an expression of that appreciation and gratitude for what was. And also, a thought about what may be. Because again, that acknowledgement of the fact that it's not always easy to look at change and loss and impermanence and transience in that way. It's very easy to approach impermanence from a place of fear, and that we start to grasp and hold on to things and grip them really tightly, or approach it from a place of ignorance where we sort of retreat and we say, oh, this isn't happening. I don't want to think about it. I'll think about it later, right? But the right way to approach impermanence is from a place of understanding and acknowledgement and acceptance. And only from that place can we experience gratitude. Right. Now, I'd spoken a few minutes ago about memento mori, to remember you must die. The flip side of memento mori is memento vivere, which is remember to live, right? Live to your fullest. Don't just think like, oh, I better, I only have so much time left. Make the most of that time, right? Remember to live. There's a great story. It's not a Buddhist story. It's a very secular story. Charles Dickens, A Christmas Carol of Ebenezer Scrooge. Someone who forgotten how to live. Very bitter, not gracious in any way, very mean towards everyone. Right, and then he had these very intense experiences, and then of course he woke up on Christmas morning. And he's like, now I'm grateful. Now I'm going to remember to live and keep, the spirit of gratitude in my heart all year round. And then now he appreciated the people around him, his nephew, which is a memory of his sister and the person who had worked for him for so long, Bob Cratchit, right? But again, we don't want gratitude only to be something that comes from, a really intense experience, or something that we only do on holidays, or something that we only do with people who are getting older, or something that only happens when we're getting a bit of nostalgic and thinking about the past, right? Gratitude is something that we want to practice every day, because impermanence is not something that happens sometimes. It's something that happens always. And so to practice gratitude, it's something that you need to build into your practice. And I love that word practice. And I know I've said this before, and I'm sure I'll say it again, but we talk about a practice of Buddhism and a practice of mindfulness and a practice of gratitude because it's something you have to work on. It's not something that you can just resolve to do and then do it. Just as though just the same way that I can't say I'm going to be a hockey player and then do it without practicing a lot, right? To really get good at it. So you need to practice gratitude. And how might that show up? Well, like I said, the practice of Thanksgiving is built into our liturgy, and you can build it into your daily practices. As you, ring the bell at your centering space, or light the candle, light incense, and you bow to your true self at your centering space. Remember, and think about the people in your life who you appreciate, who you're grateful for. Think about your day and what you're thankful for about your day. Maybe what happened yesterday, maybe something that you're going to do that evening that you're thankful for. And it's a changing of your attitude and your approach to the day and to the people around you. Maybe start with the things that are easy, right? And then maybe extend it out to, it's like, what, I have something tough coming up, or I'm going through something kind of tough, but you know what? I appreciate that because it's taught me these things, A, B, and C. And do that every time when you're at your centering space. And what you'll find is that it starts to work its way into your time away from your centering space. When you're out in the world, when you're driving, when you're working with people on a daily basis. And yes, also as you're working with folks that maybe, you never know, maybe this is going to be their the last time they'll be able to spend the holiday this way. It will increase your sense of appreciation and make you thankful for all of those people in your life. Now, like I said, it's very easy to say that and to say, well, practice gratitude. But it is something that you have to work on. And I understand too that this notion of impermanence, it can be a tricky one, right? And so if you do find that this practice of gratitude is something that you want to work on, and you find that it's been a struggle for you, or you find yourself kind of getting stuck on the idea of impermanence, I'd invite you to reach out to us. Our vow as priests is to, help relieve the suffering of people, and to teach folks ways to work with their thoughts and feelings and actions, and to make a creative change in their life, to ease suffering. So if this is something that is sort of looming large for you, and I know especially it can be as we head towards the end of the year, please do reach out to us, because we would love to speak with you more and help you kind of think through what this means for you and how you can practice gratitude in your everyday life. So I hope that some of what I've shared has been helpful to you. And if you do want to learn more about our practice, sort of what we do, or talk to someone, please reach out to us at asksenseitony.com. And I hope that all of you have a great week, a grateful week, full of thanksgiving and appreciation of the people and the things that are in your life, an appreciation of the fact that they may not always be there, but that they are there to teach you and to enrich you, and for you to understand that connection that we have with all of those things in our lives. So thank you all. And again, hope you have a great week.